Oh man, this might have not been the best choice to do for first video back after a long hiatus, because they're hard under ideal circumstances. And I haven't done this in a while and I'm rusty. This might be really bad. Although, I mean, if you're seeing it right now, then clearly it turned out at least sort of okay. Okay, so I have not reviewed anything since the year 2013. So, suffice to say, I have a pretty serious backlog happening right now. So there are a couple things I'm gonna do full reviews of, but as for right now, I'm just gonna try to knock out a bunch at once with like all of the books that I don't have a whole lot to say about, but still want to talk about briefly. So let's go ahead and get started on that. First up is Three Men in a Boat, To Say Nothing of the Dog by Jerome K. Jerome. The plot of this is pretty straightforward. There's three men. They're in a boat going down the Thames. Also, there is a dog. This is an English comic novel from the Edwardian period, and everybody always talks about how funny it is, and like, I don't know, I thought it was funny, but not as funny as was described to me. Like, I found it much more charming than I did funny. Like, it was totally still good. Like, I still very much enjoyed it. I feel like I'm coming across like I hated it, which is not the case at all. Like, it is a very pleasant way to spend a few hours, but it's just, it was not as funny as I thought it was going to be, so that was slightly disappointing. Next we have The Yellow Wallpaper, Herland, and Selected Writings by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Charlotte Perkins Gilman was an American writer from the late 19th and early 20th century. You've probably read her short story, The Yellow Wallpaper, because it gets taught a lot in English classes, but like she was super prolific, so this collection is like not even close to being her complete works. It starts out with Herland, which is a novella, and then goes into the short stories and then into poetry. I liked this, but it was pretty uneven, to be perfectly honest. Like, initially as I started reading it, I thought I was gonna enjoy this whole collection way more than I actually ended up liking it, because it starts off with Herland, which I kind of love. Herland is basically some utopian fiction about a bunch of women forming a society out in the jungle, isolated from everyone with no men. And like, it is goofy as hell in the best way. Like, this is feminist writing, but it's also very early science fiction, like early enough that like people weren't really clear on what science could and could not do yet. So like, the science in this is totally ridiculous. Like, basically these women start having babies like through sheer force of willpower. It's also really silly in other ways. Like, it's explicitly stated that the absence of men has made everyone's sex drive die out, and I'm just like, oh, Charlotte, that's not what would happen. That's another thing too, like, it is very much of its time. Like, the setting is intentionally vague, but it's very clearly implied to be somewhere like South America or Africa, maybe Asia. But like, she goes out of her way to establish that all of these women are white. Yeah. Fun fact about first wave feminists, most of them were super racist by modern standards. As for the short stories, like, they were all right. None of them are as good as The Yellow Wallpaper, but I think that has more to say about how good The Yellow Wallpaper is than the quality of any of the other stories. And I wasn't really into the poetry. I did just kind of skim it, but like, poetry isn't really my jam anyway. Next up is A Mercy by Toni Morrison. This is actually the first Toni Morrison that I've read, and I think it's considered like a lesser Toni Morrison, which like makes me really excited for her other stuff, because this was like great. It's about a young slave girl named Florence and the family that I don't want to say takes her in. That sounds a lot more kindly than, you know, they own her. That's how slavery works. But yeah, it's all about her and the Dutch settlers that own her, and the other people living on their farm. And like, it's just really good and well crafted. The way this book is structured is that the odd number chapters are all written in first person, like as Florins, and the even number chapters are written in close third, each following one of the other characters, which I really like because it means the story is revealed like very slowly and deliberately over the course of the novel. I did find the first Florins chapter kind of difficult because it's written in dialect as a character who's borderline illiterate. And it's the first chapter in the book, so you're just like dumped into it. But like by the time the second Florins chapter rolled around, I was totally fine. So like if you feel that initial moment of panic, like it's gonna be okay, like you can do this. And I actually like that a lot. I like that Toni Morrison just sort of like throws you in the deep end there and trusts you to be able to figure it out. Like I think that's cool. So yeah, I really recommend this because it's really good and it's also super short. Like why would you not read it? Great. Next up is Hyperbole and a Half by Allie Brosh. I read this immediately after reading A Mercy because like A Mercy is really good, but it's also really heavy and I like needed something light and like a good pick-me-up, and this was perfect because this is hilarious. Like I started reading it and I was like crying, laughing immediately. These are basically just like little stories from her life, illustrated with these hilarious little MS Paint pictures. And it's based on her her blog, which is also called Hyperbole and a Half. And I've been reading her blog for a while now, so I was like, yes, I should get this because she is great. And this is super good. It's like a bunch of the best stuff from the blog plus some new stuff. So yes, A+, would recommend. Next up is The Lumbar Fox by, fuck, who wrote that? Ava Lovelace. I'm gonna assume that that is not her real name. So this is porn. It's just porn. Other people also randomly buy like hilarious looking erotica from the Kindle store because it's late at night and it's only 99 cents. Right? Yeah, pretty much all of my purchasing decisions are based on the teachings of noted economist Macklemore. So this is about like a nerdy girl whose car breaks down in an Atlanta snowstorm, and so she shacks up with like this weird rural hipster who like brews his own beer and like cooks, and like they bone down a lot, and I thought it was gonna be funny, but it was actually just sad. If the pornography that you've written can be described as self-conscious, you have probably failed in your goals. I have admittedly not read a whole lot of like mainstream published erotica, but like what is this thing where like all of the female protagonists have like terrible self-esteem? Like, is that supposed to be relatable? Like, I think it's meant to be relatable, but it just like immediately veers off into unfortunate implicationsville. Like, don't worry if you have low self-esteem, a hot dude can just fuck it right into you. The dude was okay, I guess? I don't know, like this was only 42 pages long, so both of them were like super underwritten. So like I don't have particularly strong opinions about either one of them as a character. What else of note is there? I learned that the porn equivalent of Chekhov's gun is apparently Chekhov's vibrator, so that was edifying. So I guess let this be a lesson to everyone to not buy silly looking porn late at night from the Kindle store. That's the moral of this story. And the last thing is Rat Queens, Volume 1, Sass and Sorcery, which is a collected trade paperback of comics, and which I also do not have a copy of because I borrowed it from my friend Chris and subsequently gave it back. So this is a fantasy comic about like a guild of 4 hard-drinking ladies who like fight monsters for money, basically, and it is super great. So this is very heavily D&D inspired, which I don't play, but I do have a pretty good like general working knowledge of, thanks to like nerd culture osmosis. So I don't know how well this would work for people who have zero knowledge of D&D, but I think if you have zero knowledge of D&D, this is probably not going to interest you that much anyway, so I really like the art in this, both in the sense that it's aesthetically pleasing and also in the sense that it's like really good about drawing female characters. And it's not even just that there's like a lack of objectification, it's also that like all of them look different from each other. Like there's a lot of variation in body types and they don't all have the same face. Like that is a big deal. I do remember there were a couple of times where I would stop and go like, yeah, this was written by a dude. But I can't specifically remember what they are now, so like probably nothing super egregious. So yeah, if you like ladies and ass kicking and fantasy settings, like I would totally recommend this. It's super fun. Okay, so that is everything for this video. If you've read any of these, I would love to know what you thought in the comments below, and I will see you soon. Bye.